Go ahead and adjust your body with your eyes closed to find more ease and pleasure. So that may mean rolling your shoulders back or stretching, but do what the body temple needs to optimize its reception, like a big antenna, tuning in to the pleasurable channel between heaven and earth. Deepen the breath towards the heart. And while gently touching your partner, see if you can harmonize your breaths from the heart. So in and out. Expanding the energy field around the chest and ribs, and sort of feeling the infinity sign as it expands through both of you. And imagine the electromagnetic pulses at there's a frequency of the heart. So as you breathe, allow yourself to feel the harmonization between the heart, like generators. And with a few more breaths, allow yourself to tune into the group heart. So even though we can't feel each other's physical frequency, let yourself enter into the portal of the deep heart, beyond time and space, and feel the field, the resonant field of love and connection, that we all share values for truth and freedom in our love. Feel the frequency of peace. And for a few more breaths, just feel the contentment. Now I'm going to invite you to drop your energy down. So you may want to exhale down into the belly, down into the solar plexus. And continue to breathe from this emotional center. Let yourself expand. And feeling actually into the physiological gut. You know, we have neurotransmitters that are produced in the gut, and there's now deep, neurological understanding about how emotions are felt from the center. So let yourself be stirred and authentic. Maybe making some sound. As you just drop into the cauldron of stirring emotions and sort of checking in as we breathe with the frequency. The serotonin that's produced there actually produces some happiness and joy, and let yourself bubble up with some of the good feelings, the positive emotions that are there. And also welcoming in that there's anger, and if not fully realize there might be irritation or annoyance, frustration. Just feel the frequency or the flavor of this first emotion stirring into where in your belly you can find some sadness or grief or loss. Maybe even regret. Make a little sound, letting that go deeper. Into some fear. And it might be just a quality of anxiety or feeling some trepidation or shyness or just like a light resistance. It could be terror, whatever valence. So just feel the quality of fear that you can access right now and welcome it with a few more breaths. Welcome it all the way down to the base of your body, feeling the fight or flight nature of fear, the survival impulse that's at the base of this emotion. And for a moment, just feel that cauldron of emotion held in the bigger container, the bigger temple of love, held in permission by your partner. And the icebreaker today is, what is your relationship to your emotions? Take a moment to just feel into the truth of that. What is your authentic relationship to your emotions? Two more breaths. And then the final inquiry is, what is your relationship to your partner's emotions? Two more breaths. Now coming into the group with a big sigh or sound from the heart, just inhale and let out some sound. Good morning. I hope I didn't put you all back to sleep. So we're going to start off with a little round of awareness about this complex, relationship we have, and I'd love for you to distill it down. Each just sharing, like, maybe we can start with Michael, like honest disclosure, like, here's my relationship to my emotions in a nutshell, and here's my awareness about my relationship to my partner's emotions.
Yeah. So what I was feeling during the meditation was this entity of emotions, and it's like multicolored thing, that has, the emotions of anger and might be red, and the emotion of joy might be green, and I'm seeing it kind of outside myself. And as those emotions come in, it feels like I'm transmuting, trying to change the uncomfortable emotions like anger or sadness into, joy. And that's kind of my relationship with it. That it's almost like a little machine that's trying to process those emotions, turning shit into gold or whatever the metaphor it is. Yeah.
And your relationship to your partner's emotions.
I feel like that relationship is also like taking the emotions, especially the ones that are more difficult to process, the anger or the those emotions that are coming in, and really trying to kind of keep myself strong in a way is how it feels, and not being taken down by those emotions, like not letting it tie into my own emotions and turn into anger back. So it's kind of like that aikido, I guess, is what I feel, that I'm doing that emotional aikido all the time and trying to not engage with those emotions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Michael didn't know I was going to put him on the spot. So who wants to share next? James.
Am I muted? Oh no, I'm not muted. Cool. So I feel like my relationship to my emotions has been changing a lot in recent time. I think to at least some extent, my relationship with emotions has been sort of a unfortunate reality that I wanted to minimize because they got in the way of getting shit done. And as of the last few months, with some of the work I've been doing, like being in and feeling emotion actually feels like some of the most celebratory things I can do, even if they're like hard emotions to feel. And so there's a very significant change happening in terms of how I relate to my emotions, and then also how much of them I have. Like I've cried more this last 3 months than I probably have in my entire adult life combined. And so, yeah, there's a big shift happening there, which I'm really enjoying.
Thank you.
And then as far as my partner's emotions, I feel like I relate very differently to them depending on what type of emotion they are. Like, I feel like most of I call them like softer emotions, are pretty easy for me. Sadness, fear, insecurity, like those are all ones that I feel like I know how to really get and show up for. And if anything, a lot of times like seeing or experiencing those will cause me to be more present.
Yep.
Whereas then some of the other emotions like anger or like shut down or like pushing away, those then I don't handle nearly as well, and then they trigger my own stuff, and rather than creating more presence, they create less. But I think that's an area to continue to work on and see where I can find ground regardless of what emotions I'm present to.
Thank you. Well said. Sharmila?
I don't know. My relationship to my emotions is like pretty internal usually. Like I feel like I get sort of swallowed inside when I'm emotional. It's kind of hard to reach other people. And they can be definitely pretty intense, but it's sort of like a I don't know, like an isolation chamber where like it feels like I get kind of looped in my emotion because I don't actually access anyone else.
Mm-hmm. And to James?
Yeah. It's also changing because he's changing in how he emotes, so I don't have a full answer for that. At this point, it's still kind of confusion.
Thank you. Who's next? Todd and Renee. Yeah.
My relationship to my emotions, I experience my emotions kind of as this easy flowing river. I don't have a whole lot of high highs or low lows. That's not that I don't have them, but they're infrequent. And when they happen, I can, I seem to be able to move through that fairly quickly and just ground myself in my own center, and not get caught there. So I feel pretty good about that. Mostly, I think because that's so easy, at various points in my life, other people have poked at it like, don't you feel anything? Like almost in judgment of how I actually do feel and experience, as though it's not enough because it's not like intense or something. So there's been that. That's made me kind of, well, is that really true for me? And it's not. How I experience my partner's emotions are really, I feel a deep calling to be a safe container, to help, just be there and hold space and let him have his own experience, whatever that is, and be mindful about how I experience his experience to make sure I'm not getting, pulled in or triggered. And I would say that I'm getting better at that, probably not perfect, but really called to be a safe container.
Great. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what hits me quickly is two things. And the first is like my relationship to my emotions is changing. It's in flux, moving from a place where I might have a tendency to let the emotions in whatever light, shadow, manifestation they currently show up, get in the driver's seat and take the bus wherever they want to go. And then if another one comes along, and so some conscious intentional work has been to notice them. And as I've moved into that and moved through being able to do that, now taking back over the driver's seat and moving the emotions out into the realm of my consciousness, and then allowing them all to be guideposts from wherever they're showing up in a manifestation of light or dark. Whether anger can be on both sides of that equation, right? So whether I'm sensing it in a way that is in service of my values or not, and then then being able to use those as guideposts to dictate how I show up in consciousness, and to sit in that place as often as possible as a human being. And then in relation to Renee's emotions, which is sort of tied together to how I'm working with my own, it's being able to hold space for what shows up, and empathically, like just in the last 48 hours, there's been some stuff that's shown up for her that's been sad. And so to be able to sense and hold the sadness empathically without attaching to it in a way that pulls me off of my ability to manage my own emotions in that ideal sort of just using them as guideposts to make informed and real true north decisions about how I want to show up consciously. So that really sums it up at the moment, I think.
Yeah, beautiful summary. Thank you. Yeah. Wow. Good. Lisa and Greg.
For me, I feel my emotions very much connected to feelings in my body. Like sometimes I have a feeling in my body and I'm like, okay, what is that? Like, almost like I get something will happen, I get the feeling in my body, and life will go on, and I'll still have the feeling in my body, and I can't remember what happened. And so what's good about that is that if I actually just really get into my body and do all the multiple techniques and things and meditate, all these things I know how to do, and I could dissipate the feeling in my body, the emotion goes away. I'm able to be me, my true self. And I think I've always known this, but I'm even more present to it right now, is that when I am feeling triggered or off or something in my body, I know that I'm denying my soul. Like, I know that I'm denying my highest self. I know that, like, it's a big fat fucking lie, and that, you know, like, it is a guidepost of, like, where am I in denial of my wholeness, you know, my magnificent, like, you know, like, I'm so clear about that, that's just a trigger of separation, you know, even more now than ever. So, and in my work, I hold people's emotions all day long, other people's emotions, and I hear all kinds of stuff, and it doesn't, I'm totally fine with it. So when somebody else's emotions, like Greg's or my kids, triggers, like when what they're feeling impacts me, it's a pretty big deal. And it's like, I want to be able to be their container and be neutral and create safe space. And I can do that a lot of the times, but Greg is going through stuff, and it's big. And some of it has to do with our relationship, of course, but a lot, you know, there's also a lot that's, you know, his own experience. But because there is tentacles into our relationship, of course, it's like harder for me to hold a safe space for him consistently, because some of it I could create that it's very personal, you know, and then I can get triggered and worried and, like, you know, about our relationship and, you know, whatever. Yeah, I really, really, really resonate with wanting to create a safe container for him. Like, I want to be that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I've been going through a lot of emotional shift over the last few months, actually since mid-July, and have been in the process of shedding some stressors. And I think the thing that has shifted in relation to my own emotions is that in the past, I've always known ways of either suppressing or dissipating, but not really getting underneath it. And so over the course of the last few months, I've kind of connected into a lot of suppressed anger and, you know, resentments and that kind of stuff. And over the last couple of months, my tolerance for just trying to dissipate emotion has gone away. So I'm finding that I need to sit in it a little bit more and feel it, have a greater awareness of what's going on,
Right.
and try to dig a little deeper into it. In the relationship with Lisa's emotions, another thing I've kind of come to realize over the last few months as I've been kind of digging into my personality and doing my own work is that I've really connected in with the fact that I'm an intuitive feeler male. And so through most of my life, as I look back, I've given up a lot of my own voice to take care of other people's needs. And so I'm actually in a place since mid-July where I've started to actually create a little bit of distance between myself and others so that I can hear my own voice, because I'm more in tune with other people's emotions than I am with my own.
Uh-huh.
So I'm creating a little bit of distance to try to hear that little voice inside me and nurture it a bit more. And so I kind of, humorously describe that as like I have no more fucks to give.
I love it, Greg.
Mhm.
I'm really proud of you. And I'm excited about that process for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's big. Okay, we have Tal and Alex.
Okay. Okay. So emotions, I've gone from avoiding emotions, through a lot of drug use in my earlier days to really delving into 10-day silent meditation retreats, and you're just got nothing but your emotions to sit with. And then it's just sort of a dance between the two. And I find that I have a lot more bandwidth for emotions to understand them and experience them at a deeper level when, I'm resourced, obviously, right? So my body's healthy and I've gotten sleep and I'm eating the right stuff. I can deal with it. And but I have tended towards um, trying to approach my emotions more as sensations in the body, so more towards the Vipassana side of things. I find that they just kind of, sometimes when I start getting into my emotions too much, then it just starts feeding it, right? And then it's like an energetic fuel into it. Whereas if I can just hold it and observe it as it is, it's got its life, it's got its shelf life, and it rises and passes, and then it's done, and there's nothing left to fuel it, and I move on. But of course, it's difficult sometimes, and I get locked in. Anger seems to be one that once it crosses a threshold, then it kind of lasts for a few days, and I just kind of get stuck in it. And as far as my partner's emotions, yeah, I can usually enjoy them, no matter what they are. But again, that's not my bandwidth, right? And so my bandwidth is marginal. If it's, and I just don't have the resources, then I have a hard time with it, and then I lash out back. But otherwise, if I'm in good standing, I feel good in myself. It really doesn't matter what their emotion is. I can just kind of be there. An interesting thing is, just really quick, I had a conversation with a therapist a while ago. We were just at a party, and she was asking me about my lifestyle, and she's very much into emotions and all, and obviously other people's. And she said, "Well, I just could never do your lifestyle because of jealousy." And I just thought how interesting it was that we decide which emotions are okay. Like jealousy is somehow a much more important emotion than whatever, like passion or all these other emotions are okay to feel and experience, but not jealousy. Like jealousy is like I have to design my whole life around avoiding that particular emotion because somehow that's sacred. And you find that a lot in relationships too. It's just like, oh, as soon as jealousy comes up, like that's the fucking holy cow.
Yeah.
That's what, that's the one that, okay, everything else has to drop for, but everything else is, it was just interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great commentary.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Alex?
I would say that I have quite a somatic relationship to my emotions. I experience them very strongly in the body. I'd say I'm pretty expressive with them, sometimes more expressive than I would like to be. I have been more recently though, I've noticed more ability to observe them with curiosity in the body, which has been cool, and felt like I had a breakthrough recently where I actually got to choose my reaction to something, which was very different experience, and I couldn't have really imagined it until I'd done it, and then I was like, wow, that was cool. I hope I can do that again. In terms of my relationship to Tal's emotions, I notice sometimes if I am experiencing a very strong emotion and then a Tal then reacts negatively to it, I can pull myself out of it quite quickly and just come back to love, because I realize that this emotion is now doing harm or it's gone too far. So it really helps me actually regulate my own emotions.
Wow, thank you.
Mhm.
It's a keen observation.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Okay, so sweet. So I'm really touched by the harvest of all of our self assessments here, and I wanted to because obviously emotional intelligence is like any of our weeks. We could go on and make that the whole course, but like I do this distillation of like what is the most powerful thing to impart to us as high level couples to create intimacy and vulnerability, and I think what I want to say about this topic above all topics is when I really look at like what passion and romance require, it's this emotional like bond. To have an emotional bond is like the ingredient to make it be like, wow, you've got the kind of marriage or partnership that's it's really flourishing. I mean, it's the make or break difference. I mean, even we all know we've had really good sexual encounters, and it's like, and if you don't have the emotional link, it's just good sex, and that's not the depth of intimacy. So we wanted to start off with a metaphor. Yeah. And what I think is so powerful is like if we happen to live in sunny San Diego, and it's not a coincidence. We're all in this like abundant conscious state, and I want to use the sun as like the soul, like our kind of it's higher than consciousness. It's really like the sun is the brightness of our inner being, our contentment, and it's beyond the weather, right? So I'm going to use, we've done this before where the earth is kind of the body, but instead of going into the moon as the romance, I'm going to talk about the meteorological atmospheric layer around the earth body, which is actually all the weather patterns, whether that's stormy or sprinkled clouds, or now it's raining, or windy. Like that whole layer is the emotional body. And what's cool about this metaphor is that we know that the sun is there even when we can't see it. So oftentimes we'll be hijacked with like, oh my gosh, there's this big, dramatic storm. And then sometimes it's like, like it just cloud breaks and you're like, oh, I'm back in the radiance of the sun, of the true self. But what's the reason this is an empowering metaphor is because too often, people are like constantly trying to change or control, the weather, or trying to sublimate, or trying to, do this or that. And it's part of it is it's like futile or unhealthy to be arguing with, this very natural phenomena that's moving through, and it's part of like the whole ecology. And really what we want to do is put our center of gravity in the sun, in the clear blue sky, or like the beyond the weather. And when our center of gravity is at that place, we can look down, and we've all done this in an airplane. You look down and you're like, wow, it's beautiful to see the clouds below, or it's beautiful, from the clear blue sky or from the sun's perspective. It's like, oh, this too will pass. And it's not like, whoa, I'm caught up in a big wet storm. It's more like, okay, the storm is happening and I'm wanting to appreciate the beauty of it. And I wouldn't want to live, and those of us that are in San Diego know this, but like you wouldn't want to live in a world with no weather. So we'll come back to the relevance of this metaphor, but the key in partnership is to know that like our, like, as we've already observed, our relationship to our emotions comes first, and then it impacts deeply our relationship to a partner's emotions. And the other obvious reality is the way one runs and feels is so different than the way another one does. And then often there can be a judgment on, another's emotions, which creates, kind of static and friction. Really, ultimately, in a healthy, happy partnership, it's like, I have full permission to feel like the huge range of weather patterns that I am, in a responsible way. And I'm giving full permission, for the glory and the beauty of your emotions. And we're living passionately, fully, intimately in that. But the reality is, just as we live in a sex negative culture, we actually live in a very, very emotional negative culture. In fact, this is a radical statement, but I would venture to guess, in the same way that Tal said, well, people use monogamy as a strategy to avoid jealousy, a huge part of why people are sex negative is because the emotions that get stirred and brought up with sexuality, especially the elation and the ecstasy, like, that's dangerous. Those are dangerous emotions. So a lot of that gets shut down, and sexuality gets shut down. But that's another conversation. The point is, we live in a society that is terrified of feelings. And did you want to talk about the three?
Yeah. So what's come up for me is around, our culture is very emotion negative, and there's kind of three levels that we can be at. One is that we're not okay with the emotions, and that's kind of the cultural thing. Like, if somebody's angry, these things are not okay. Then there's a level which is, being okay with those emotions. That we're okay if our partner's in those emotions. We're okay with our own emotions. But then there's that third level, which is celebrating the emotions and really understanding that the emotions are what bring the passion. They are what's attached, just like the metaphor, we have the weather that brings the flowers. We have the rain that brings the life, that is here. And being able to start stalking that, like moving ourselves towards that, beyond just being okay with the emotions, with our partner's emotions, but being able to start really celebrating, okay, those emotions, just like jealousy. I personally use the map that when I have jealousy, it's pointing towards something, some need that's not being satisfied for me, and an emotion that's there. And I use it as when I get teacher. Yeah, as a celebration. Actually, it's a gift to me when I get that jealousy. Unlike the therapist who's like, okay, I don't want to ever have that jealousy, and I'm pushing it away.
Yeah, beautiful. So what happens? Why celebrate it? Why are emotions so great? And it's like, we have, like Michael said, it's like it brings life and it's beautiful. But the alternative is numbness. The alternative is we push and push, and then like there's a deadening, and it's like we die. There's so many people that are walking around like zombies. They're half alive. And this is like, if you can like feel the feelings, they clear faster, they move, there's more, they don't get stuck and metastasize in the body. And actually, it's undeniable now scientifically that when feelings aren't felt and the body like holds it turns into dis-ease, in extreme in cases like cancer, but all kinds of diseases are manifestations of unfelt emotions. So part of a healthy relationship is to be like, let yourself express it because it'll pass. And the part of the reason we don't express it and we end up diseased is because, not just, like I said, the society is scared of it, but we're so afraid of the impact that emotion is going to have on our partner. And a lot of times it's like we just hold it back. So with the collective agreement, we're all like, yay, we're celebrating emotions. Emotions are good. With that collective agreement, I want to tell a little story. A research project. I don't know who did it. I heard about this through my therapist, but there was an MRI. They were looking at the brain and where pain registers in the brain. And so they were, they put somebody in the MRI and then they'd shock them with like on a scale of 1 to 10, they'd give them shocks and see how it registered, what light up. Of course, we know where the pain center of the brain is that lit up in the MRI. But then what they were looking at is it would give them emotional, painful memories, and that same part of the brain lights up. So what's valuable to note is that emotional pain is experienced the same as physical pain in the brain. Like it's painful physiologically. And then so we know this, but then the emotional focused therapists, having heard this study, said, well, let's do this study about how to reduce that pain, because we also have a theory that if you are in pain, it's lessened by being with someone you love. And so what they did was this controlled study, same thing, they're shocking patients in the MRI machine. And
sounds like fun.
And they have a very caring nurse, come in and hold the person's hand while they're getting the shock. And like first they shock it, it's like, what? And then they have the caring, and it's like, oh wow, it only registered half as much painful, because there was a sense of like, I'm supported, it's like the shock, the pain was not so high. And they actually verbally reported like that didn't hurt as much as the last one. And then they looked at, okay, well, what happens if it's not just a nurse, but it's like your beloved? And they would come in and they would do the same level of shock, and the people would be like, that's it? It didn't really hurt. It was just like a little shock, because their beloved had a way of like, oh, I'm attuned to, and this is a function of attunement. I'm connected with, I'm being felt, I'm sharing my feelings. And then they did this dastardly thing. They took couples who were in active fights and arguments and and they would have them come in and hold their hands, and the pain registered even worse. like they would have emotional pain because the person was, not that the person they want to be there to comfort them was not a comfort to them.
They had a pain in the brain and a pain in the ass. So it was like double pain.
So this is all, if you want to, I don't know where, I didn't read the study, but my therapist told me about it because it's the emotional focus therapy, which we did when Michael, Rachel, and I were really at that point of divorce.
Killing each other.
Yeah, it was horrible. And we did, I think it was a good long series of months of emotionally focused therapy. And the whole point of this type of therapy is that there's a bond that you have, and at some point, if that bond is injured, and it feels like a broken bone, like, okay, there's an actual bond that has been ruptured. Emotionally focused therapy is like how to repair that bond. And the broken attachment, that injury feels like it creates such anxiety, and it can feel like someone has panic attacks, and that's what I was going through. Was an attachment injury, is what they called it, and it's a sense of either betrayal or and people can do all kinds of work, but if that injury isn't repaired, then the emotional safety isn't there to feel your feelings. And so I want to say that, we've got a healthy group of partners who might have little fractures in their bond. It might not be like a compound break in this group, but there might be little fractures that are like, oh, that time I never really forgave. I never got over. It's still an ouch when I think about it. There's still a charge. And there's profound value. And we've done this kind of in the work table and some of the assessment, but there's profound value to going through and going, wow, what am I still, like, in order to feel that bond flowing and really get that my partner's attuning to me, there's still something I need to forgive, or we need to apologize for or repair so that this can be a healthy flow. Okay, so I'll pause that for a moment because we'll talk about 2 homework assignments today, but I'm going to pause that when we get to homework.
Did you want to talk about like the Charles Berner, that that portion?
Sure. We'll do that.
Are you still on track for that?
Yeah, let's do that next. Great. And I'll say, actually, before I get to that, there's different, models and methodologies around emotions. And I'm really committed to sharing with you the ones that we know work for us. And so for years, Michael and I studied nonviolent communication, which we have introduced in this class, and most of you have some kind of background in. But I want to point something out about nonviolent communication. So we have, here's the observations of what happened, right? Like last night at the Roman orgy, I could tell you what was said. Do you want to mention it?
Okay. Yeah. So this is, so last night, I was there with Taina and Kamala Devi, and we were getting into some sort of a scene, and I said, this is fantastic. I've got both of my wives here. And I thought that was a pretty innocent thing, since she has been filling in as a surrogate wife when Kamala Devi's been gone, and we've been talking about that. But
and I didn't react that night at all. But that's the observation. That's what occurred.
No, she stuffed it.
I didn't say anything. I was just like, and then the feeling level, right, is like, okay, well, what are you feeling? And at that moment, I felt shock, right? And then I later woke up, felt like livid. I was angry. But NVC would go from observations to feelings, and then it would go into needs. What are the unmet needs? Well, obviously, I need to feel special, like the number one priority wife, whatever it is, right? So that's the need. Now, the final piece is requests, which is like, I could come to Michael and be like, hey, Michael, don't ever call anyone else your wife because I'm the only wife, right? Or whatever the request is. And I'm just showing you the steps. But the problem is now this NVC empathy tool, if you notice, is like, oh, now it's moving me right into a strategy. Here's a way to, if you do this, I don't have to feel my uncomfortable feelings, right? And so many people start using NVC as a way to get their needs met. It's like, I'm using this to get my needs met. And that's important, valuable work. But if we really want to do the empathy work, get out of the strategy, let go of trying to make change or difference. And like, how do Michael and I cultivate like just feeling what needs to be felt, hearing each other's feelings, and making that okay. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those, I should post that video about, the nail in the head, but it's one of those differences between the man who wants to fix it, like just pull the nail out of the head, and the woman who's like, but I want you to feel the nails in my head, like mm-hmm. There's a feeling here. And so it's a gender difference.
Mm-hmm. And the way that we handled it, so this morning was the first time that she told me that she'd had that reaction as we were walking. And, my first impulse was, oh yeah, but, I've been calling her my other wife, for months now, but I didn't, luckily I was present enough to not, defend myself and go defensive. Instead, I listened and I let it come in. And then as we were talking, it came back around to her, how she was in this, struggle with Harry, right now, and that she wasn't feeling that, that support. And so she was feeling that jealousy.
It was a deeper,
within herself.
The point is, it's like we could have stayed at the surface and argued about the surfacing, or we could be like, wow, there's deeper emotions here. Let's go deeper. What's underneath that?
Right, exactly. And by just listening and feeling, it shifted, and so I didn't need to go into that defensive place because I could feel what was happening with her.
I'm really proud of us because this happened like all of 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But what Michael and I did this week, and it was really profound for us because we've looked at what's the genius in how we've gotten into this immense emotional resonance that we're in, and what is the practice that will support you in going there? Because we're wanting to support you this month in saying, what if, and it's kind of a thought experiment, what if instead of looking at emotions as a means to the end, which is, oh, I'm feeling these emotions, let's change the strategy, or let's do this, or let's fix something. What if you gave yourself the month to say, let's feel deeper? Let's amplify, like what we use the example of being tornado chasers,
Mm-hmm.
like
in that storm metaphor.
Yeah, let's just like be fascinated by the weather and increase and give more permission, because the world is not giving us permission to feel. Let's give each other permission to feel, but let's do it in a safe way. And by safe way, I mean not dramatic and fighting.
And in a sense, you're going to want to come from that blue sky place yourself, as you're looking at that tornado maybe that's on the other side, to have enough blue sky present, within yourself to be able to handle that, within that container. And that's where the magic is. That's where we start going into the deep, places.
And it's my experience that when I have the safety to feel my emotions and the presence and non-reactivity, that my emotions can actually be felt more responsibly, more depth, more creatively. Like it can turn into art, as opposed to, oh, I don't feel safe to feel my emotions, or that I'm looking for an outlet, so I'm going to make drama. I'm going to create situations that are just in my mind, spin stories, and it's like now there's chaos, but that's because the need to feel emotion is like, I need to feel alive. It's like my lifeblood. It's like we can get addicted to chaos and drama in order to just, feel. And this month, if you cultivate the practice of feeling for the sake of feeling, of supporting each other's feelings, then you'll build a muscle that allows you to be like, oh, I'm feeling more alive, and I don't have to do it in destructive, chaotic ways. I actually have a nice, healthy steam vent for my feelings. Okay, so good, nice
deep breath. I need one.
All right, I'm looking at the clock because I want to move into homework, but I want to see if.
Do you think we should do the homework and then the Charles Brenner?
Oh yeah, let me talk about the Charles Brenner piece.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. This is taking it to that deeper spot, taking it beyond, the emotions as a thing.
So Charles Brenner was a Zen practitioner, and he had done many sessions, and he was 30 years meditating, and he was married to a psychologist who at the time in the 70s was doing these pop culture communication exercises, to get couples into their feelings. And you and I have already experienced this with the relationship evolving dyad, right? The tell me something you like about me, tell me something you think we agree on, tell me something you want me to know about yourself. Like that was one of our homeworks. I highly encourage you to continue that. It's a life tool. But that was designed by Charles Brenner and his wife. He also had this revelation because what he watched in her therapy practice and also in his sessions is he would watch that some people would come to great enlightenment and some people would just, meditate in kind of contentment for years. And like, what is it that made the difference? And a lot of times, it's like a thought arises in our awareness, and whether it's a feeling thought or a feeling, it arises in our awareness with the intention, with the purpose of being gotten, like understood by another. And if that doesn't get gotten, it arises and it sort of loops, or it falls away and somebody else picks it up, but it's like it loops. And when it's gotten across to someone, then it almost composts or falls to the ground of being, like it like falls away, and it leaves one with a sense of, I'm clearer, I'm more connected. And when somebody, and you guys all know this, right? When someone, if I express an idea and Michael doesn't get it, I'll express it again and I'll express it louder, and he'll be like, you know, he gets reactive, and then I express it again. I mean, how many people have been in arguments where you're like, I'm saying, like, stop saying the same fucking thing. Well, if you heard me, if you really heard what I was saying, I wouldn't have to repeat myself. It's actually true. Like, when understood, and we know this when we're talking to a really good listener, like, we say it, they get it. I'm like, oh, that was easy. So one half of the emotional, like, we can talk about being passionate and stormy and all expressed, but the most important ingredient to emotional intelligence is listening. I'm really happy you're wearing a nice clear blue shirt.
Yeah, that was ironic. I didn't even yeah. So what Charles Berner found within the work, a couple of things. There were people that had like repressed judgments and things that they'd been held on for 30 years, that they were able to clear it in a weekend with the type of work that they were doing. And he also found that enlightenment experience that came to some masters over decades, he was able to create very quickly when people were facing one another, and that emotions basically was gotten or was communicated when there was somebody there to witness it. My personal take on it is, because we're group animals, you know, we've evolved as group animals, that's critical for us in our enlightenment, you know, process, that we have somebody there to hear it, to communicate it to.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so the listening, there, you know, there's different types of, there's actually 200 types of listening, and I'm not going to go into like, what are we listening for? How are we listening? But I will, for the sake of this month's homework and the emotional exercise, I'm going to say what we're listening from the emotional resonance place, which is listening for what another is feeling, listening to it. It's deeper than words. So a lot of times when we're learning how to feedback somebody's experience, it's almost like we want to parrot and use the same words that they were used or whatever. Screw all that. In a moment, you'll ask your partner or in the homework, like I might say to Michael, feel what you're happy about in our relationship right now.
Mm-hmm. And I'm feel very happy that we're able to do this deeper work and go to a much deeper place than I've ever been able to with anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And so before, I'm going to tell you my inner process, before I repeat back what he said, I'm actually putting myself in his shoes. I'm feeling, if I were Michael, how would that feel? I'm not making that right or wrong. I'm not listening to what it actually says about me. I'm just like, okay, I'm putting myself in Michael's shoes, and I can see, and here's now where I'd say, I can see how you'd feel happy that we're doing this deeper emotional work.
Right.
And so I'm simply validating his feelings from his perspective with as much genuine empathy as possible. And, you know, so I would say, thank you for his sharing. I'd give him the emotional reflections. He could say, you know, thank you. And then my next question to him is, feel what you're angry about in our relationship right now. And we're not going to do all of it, but it's basically like stepping out of my shoes, putting myself in his shoes, listening to that. When he shares it, I say, thank you. I reflect back from my understanding of his perspective, to which he says, yeah, or thank you, or whatever, acknowledges. And then my next question is, feel what you're, you know, sad about in our relationship right now. And then after that same cycle of my repeating back what I heard, I would say, feel what you're afraid of in our relationship right now. And then I would reflect back and we would be complete. So he's gone through 4 levels. And then we would change over to where he would be asking me those same 4 questions. Now, what I want you to know about these 4 questions is that when, emotions used to be this big gestalt, like black box thing, but what we really have found because of the, functional MRIs, we now understand that there's actually 4 primary emotions that light up in different centers of the brains. But we also know that, so happiness, joy, elation, all those positive feelings are just, in that. Oh, by the way, if you haven't already seen Disney's Inside Out, I think that's what it's called. It has these 4 emotions as characters. So there's a joy, and there's also an anger, and there's a sadness or grief or something. Yeah, I think it's grief. Mm-hmm. And then there's a fear. And now you may have the thought, like, I'm not afraid, like you might say, well, right now I'm irritated. I don't have fear or, depression or whatever. The brilliance of this exercise is that we are feeling all of it all the time. And to actually allow ourselves to feel things that we're not consciously aware, we have to take a moment to feel in and go, oh, let me find some irritation inside of myself. And when I say anger, I mean like the whole spectrum of irritation, annoyance, whatever. But it's that order is profound too, because oftentimes like the reaction is, like fight or flight, like the surface reaction is I'm angry. And then when we go deeper, usually we're angry because we're protecting something precious. Then when we go deeper, we're like, oh, I'm actually afraid. Let's go into sad. Like I'm sad that something's going to be lost or has been lost, or that's what the sadness is. I'm sad. And then when we go deeper, it's I'm afraid of losing ultimately myself, ultimately life. I'm afraid of dying. But we don't have to get existential, just really what in the moment is the most authentic expression of your happiness, your anger, your sadness,
and your fear. And just a little tune up on the form, that the reason we did it with you're asking those 4 questions to the other person and not asking one and then coming back and they ask you, is because it can get into a loop of where we're getting attached to what they're talking about, and we might be angry in the relationship, and we might react that way. So we do all 4 of those together so that we can kind of keep that container kind of precious, and keep that in mind when you're doing it as well, that we're not here to like react to those emotions. And it's easy to fall into that, especially like with NVC and with a lot of the other tools. So you want to keep that in mind, that you're celebrating, that you're witnessing and you're hearing and you're feeling these emotions and responding back. Also, in the way that you respond back, just saying thank you. Sometimes you can trigger if you even ask, is that all, or do you have more? So you want to be careful not to cut someone off, before they're done, but you also don't want to like have them feel like they're being minimized if you say, is that all, or something like that.
Anything you say, because someone could be very emotional and any feedback from their partner could be fighting words.
Right.
We know from experience.
Right. And so yeah, just thank you.
The form.
And I know Kamala Devi said not to like repeat back all of the things, but you may want to talk a little bit about it instead of just saying, oh, I could see why you feel angry. And then I can see why you feel sad. I see why you feel
you want to actually put yourself in their shoes and say, I can see why you would feel this way.
Yeah, because of,
what the specifics of whatever they said. Repeat back very empathetically what you heard them say is what you're doing.
But you don't have to parrot it all back like in NVC.
It's the most authentic, repeating back what you have heard in your own words as you can do. I love everything that you said, because like when you're the listening partner, you are the clear blue sky. And here's the thing. is they may be saying something that is fucking off base. Like I, maybe, you know, like I'm going to, like, now that the tiny thing's kind of a joke, like maybe I'll say to him, I'm angry because you said you were going to get married to Taina and that you're going to leave me. And he could be like, no, I didn't say that. But that might be my emotional why I'm angry. Like, I heard this story or whatever. And he's not to defend the situation. And I'm telling you this because what happens is when I express untruth or story or, you know, I can actually self-correct and see myself, you can see and feel the lie in your own body. Your body's a lie detector in a sense. And if he comes defensive, then I'll root deeper into my story. There's something very profound about the zen of just letting someone have their process. So I want to make this distinction huge because in the depths of what we understand about how human emotion happens, it's like an observation occurs that a video camera could grab. And then there's the story we make up about that, right? There's the filter, which could be a cracked lens. It could be that you're seeing through crazy. But there's basically how you're perceiving it, the story you're saying, what meaning you're making of it. And then the emotions are actually reacting not to what the videotape saw, but to all of the meaning you're making of it. And now this is not the type of argument or conversation where you're like telling someone how they should interpret reality. This is like, whatever crazy you say, I can see how you'd feel that way. Because if I had that cracked lens, I'd feel that way too. You're not saying that, but you're not trying to fix or adjust or
clean the lens.
Not at all. It's like, this is an emotional venting exercise that's saying, I want to give you permission to practice the full range of feelings. Now, that's one point, right? Is like, some of what we're saying might not be accurate. Second point, it may be hard to hold. It's really hard to see your beloved suffer or in frustration or pain, especially if you feel like you can fix it, or especially if it's like, oh, they don't need to be. It's unnecessary suffering. They're suffering over something that was a misunderstanding. Like, I just want to say that's hard, but it's infinitely harder if what they're suffering about appears to be at your cause by your hand. So if you think it's hard to hold space, like Lisa gave a brilliant example, like clients, bring on an auditorium of people in full emotional release. I'll hold for all of them. You put my child in that room and all of a sudden that's kryptonite, right? You put my husband, it's like, fuck, how am I supposed to hold space now? So what I'm asking everyone to do is we're building the muscle of how can my beloved feel their feelings even and especially about our relationship, which is like, those are fucking fighting words. Like, that's where I can't help but take it personally, right? And we're saying, let's just build the muscle of you having your feelings about our relationship, and no matter what your version of reality is, I'm going to be in the practice of making that acceptable and okay for this exercise.
And I'm going to write out the words so that they kind of tune it up, and I'll send it over on the messenger.
Send it on the Facebook page, yeah.
On the Facebook page, yeah.
So now we have a little time for either questions or closure. And the other, I'm going to call this, so this assignment itself is something that I want you to do, and it doesn't take that long, and it goes really deep, and it creates a sense of intimacy. The result is intimate or immediate intimacy afterwards. Like, wow, I feel really felt. But I'm going to ask you to do it. And how long does it take? It took us like 10 minutes.
15 minutes maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Give yourself 20 minutes to do this exercise, give or take. And I want you to do this as many times as you can, which is like, it's not like, yay, I did it once, check. It's like, this month, give your partner the gift of being like, let's build our emotional intelligence together. Let's build the emotional safety. Let's just give each other, you know, to make up for all of the emotional negativity or challenge or taking things personal. Let's do this. And then here's extra credit. And I'm not going to go into this deeply this week, but you know, for those of you who notice that you're like, I don't feel safe with my partner emotionally, I want you to look inside and look at the history and say, what were the attachment wounds? Like, let me really assess the moment when I felt hurt or betrayed and I felt like it's no longer safe to bring you my emotions. And I'm going to actually look at, I'm carrying that's between us. How do we get forgiveness for this? How do we repair our emotional bond so that we can have a free channel of attunement? And that is deeper work, but that may be work that I can support you on in our individual calls. Okay, so I'm going to make that the directive wherever you are in your next call with me, that you both have self-assessed, like, hey, these are the emotional pieces that if I got through this, there'd be an open channel.
And even if you don't get that, the alchemy that comes from this work is going to be there. You know, as long as you're doing the exercises, just that being witnessed in your emotions is the deep magic.
Repair the safety.
Yeah.
Good.
And should we call them emotions dyad? Emotional dyad?
That's fine. That's great for now.
Okay.
We'll just call this the emotional.
This is the emotional dyad, so we'll refer to it that way.
Yeah, and so let's go around this. Great. Let's go around the circle, and
people may have some questions.
That's what we'll do. Is we'll just
because we've said a lot of
we
stuff.
have, but what we're gonna do is for closure, you'll share what you got. What's one little thing that you got as a takeaway, and this is a chance to ask a question if and for the group's benefit. So who wants to share first? Lisa and Greg.
So my question is, I guess, or just want clarification. We do this exercise, so what do you do with, I think that's nothing, but what do you do with the stuff that's brought up? Like, do we just, for this period of time, just hold space for the sharing and the listening and the creating that emotional safety, and then not just set aside trying to fix it? That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. This is your opportunity to really feel into that and just let it and sit with it for this month.
Yeah. So great. And it is a month. You know, we're long game in our partnerships. So this is not going to go if there's something that, you know, is bigger than the month, it's not going to go unprocessed. If it's something that needs more support, you know, we can support each other. But I love it. Sorry, I want you to trust the process, because ironically and deeply, shit self-corrects. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's the astounding thing, is we think we have to like temper and meddle and like the mind has to, but there's an emotional wisdom that will reorganize reality. Well, we'll go like, wow, I'm like, if you let your emotions feel shit, then there's stuff untruths that actually get reorganized if heard. If they're not heard, they'll just loop and they'll, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. This is really resonating with me and for us, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the timing is actually quite good, because part of the process that I've had over the last few months have been, you know, as I mentioned earlier, connecting in with a bunch of suppressed, you know, anger or resentments, that kind of thing. And while I was kind of in the depths of it, I intuitively decided that I would just make a list of all of my resentments from as far back as I can remember to now, in the hopes that I would have to like figure out which stuff I want to let go, which stuff might need to be healed, or which stuff might require some new boundaries to be set. And so I just made a massive list of resentments from, you know, parents.
I can see it's like a scroll and it just keeps going. I love it.
I have a lot of them. And I've been kind of sitting on that list for the last month or month and a half. I haven't really done anything with it yet. So this seems like a nice opportunity to kind of go back and look at Lisa's section and say like, okay, what am I willing to let go of here? What are the things that,
Yeah. So for the sake of the month, I'm going to invite everybody to stay out of strategy. So if you go back to that list, it's like, what do I need to feel more? And then maybe next month you can look at where I can set boundaries and yada, yada. But everybody make a commitment to let's stay out of strategy this month. And that's a fucking huge request because, because it's a partial truth. I want you guys to know this is not a sustainable way of living. This is just saying, hey, let's build some muscles, right? Let's do an isolation training.
Yeah, but the alchemy of the container, you can just kind of look at it as a container for the month. The alchemy of that container is going to burn through a lot of that shit that you can't do when you're looking at it logically, with your brain. Like this is the one you're doing triage on all this stuff. It doesn't work. But when you throw it into this alchemy, the alchemy of being heard about your emotions, it changes everything. Yeah. And just let the magic of that practice happen.
I'm going to say one more thing about this practice, okay? Because I'm actually going to ask you guys to do it twice. I want you to do it as many times as you can, but there's two different forms, which is feel what you're feeling happy about right now. But then the other form is feel what you're feeling happy about in our relationship. Because the fact that when you can show up for your partner's feelings about other shit, like that's so valuable and encouraging, and we support each other's so and it's much easier to do it when it's not about us. So I'm giving you extra homework, but it's going to help with the differentiation. It's just like, here's the easy way to do it, and it's beautiful and you feel the value of it. And then the advanced way to do it is feel what you're feeling
in the relationship.
And I want you to do both. So now it becomes a 40-minute practice, but it's well worth it. Okay. So we're moving on from Greg and Lisa. Thank you. To Todd and Renee. Yes.
So I had something else to say, but now I'm just going to say I think you need to name that practice, that last one, the advanced form. I think that's the compersion generator.
The compersion generator.
Nice.
So that really struck me. And then gratitude again. Just thank you, everybody. And the resonance and the reflection is so strong in here that I'm just grateful.
Yeah, thank you, Todd.
Yeah. Same here. Just looking forward to putting some intentionality around this focus area.
Excellent. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay.
James and Sharmila?
Yeah, it looks like Tall's missing, so we'll go to James and Sharmila.
Well, I think I'm looking forward to having a focus on emotion for the next little while. Like I'm in this place where I'm adapting to a reality in which I have them. There's definitely stuff there to play with. And then also like just in terms of where we're at, I just recently started to fall in love with someone for the first time since we've been together, and that's brought up a lot of emotion and sensitivity, and it's been really sweet, but it's also been a lot. And so I'm just looking forward to having more ways and more practices to be able to really explore those feelings together.
Sharmila?
I don't have anything to share right now.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you both.
Tall and Alex?
Very good.
This feels very timely, and I'm grateful to have the support of releasing the structures and processes, because that's kind of where I feel like, yeah, that's where I'm experimenting at the moment. So yeah, grateful.
Just for clarification, Alex, releasing the structures of what? Which?
If like, you know, just having less like importance on agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because there's a little bit of irony here, like,
we're giving you a new structure.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, emotion is so like oceanic, right? So where it's like, okay, we're going into the emotion, we're not trying to like build structures to contain the emotion, we're actually, but ironically, it's like we're building a canal to channel. so we're giving you a new structure, yes, but we're staying out of strategy. So
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tall.
Awesome.
And by the way, I just want to say, like, Michael and I, one of the biggest movements and transformation in our relationship is a whole lot less agreement and strategy and more showing up for like what love does. Like, you know, how do we serve love? And some of the, you know, a lot of the teachings that we're offering you guys is coming from that place more and more. We're all moving in that direction, taking the training wheels off, you know, and cruising more in the direction of love. Top.
Yeah, I think I feel like I personally had a really extended honeymoon with Alex, and so now it's just like, you know, the emotional things start to bother, or there's been enough emotional bumps along the way that they're now starting to build up, and so there's just some stuck emotions, and so maybe louder emotions or disproportionate reactions sometimes to emotions because of past stuff. So it's definitely very timely, and looking forward to doing the work.
Yeah. I'm looking at it as an extender, a honeymoon extender, a way of extending that even more. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Anything else that wants to be said for closure? Good, Todd.
One thing that struck me when you were talking about the exercise, I forget the guy's Barnard, where you're doing the 4 and listening, giving, receiving kind of paradigm. For me, and I don't know if this will be helpful to anybody else, but for me, my personality, sometimes I can become pretty impassioned. So I always need to try to remember on both sides of that to stay in like uber gentleness, so that I don't derail any of it myself, whether I'm speaking or receiving. So
yeah, sweet.
For what it's worth.
No, it's valuable. There's other things like, you know, if you guys have insights or awarenesses or experiences doing this process, please post about it so we can learn from each other. What is, you know, I think what's the final kind of words of wisdom that I want to impart is that the role of the listening partner is as important, if not more, than the speaking partner. And it's like you're deeply rooted in the earth. You're open to the, you know, not just the clear blue sky, the sun, but beyond. And you're from an open heart, like sincerely putting yourself in the other's shoes. And if you're not capable of doing that, don't do this exercise. Don't fucking fake it. Don't, you know, like sit there and like resent the person, because what'll happen is, I don't even need to go into it. I just want to say that this is a listening exercise, and that's the biggest muscle that we're building. It's not the expressing part.
And so you may need to do it at a time when you are
resourced. Yeah.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
Et cetera. Yeah.
And I know with all of our busy schedules that's a big ask. So please prioritize this. Do this early. You know, so that we're going to talk to you next week, and we need everybody to do this at least once, you know, by next week. So do it as soon as you can and do it as often as you can. All right. And I'm excited to hear your results, and we're going to post a few things, including a funny video if you haven't seen the nail video. Mm-hmm. All right. Mwah.
Love you.
Blessings, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah. Queens.